Welcome back everyone, it is Mike from ManaHoarders. In this video we are bringing you a commander deck tech for an Esper commander, Nevinyrral, Urborg Tyrant. We can cast Nevinyrral for 3, a white, a blue, and a black. He is a 3/6 legendary zombie wizard with hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Whenever he enters, we can create a tapped 2/2 black zombie for each creature that died this turn. When he dies, we can pay 1 and destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Before we dive into the deck, let's go over a few key points. First up, the final price for this build came in at $97.06. That does include the price of our commander and all of our lands. Now, do bear in mind some of these prices will vary greatly depending on the quality of the cards you purchase, the vendor you use, and a variety of other factors. In terms of power level, I would rate this deck at around a 6 out of 10 on the power scale. This build is all about the zombies. We have ways to create zombies, we have plenty of cards to buff up our zombie tokens to make them gain evasion to get around our opponent's defenses and deal tons of damage, and we do have a bit of aristocrat style as the base, so that whenever conventional combat isn't working, we can sacrifice our creatures to drain our opponent's life totals and win us the game. If you've watched our previous video on Nevinyrral, you are going to notice some of these pieces may be the same. After getting to play through that deck a little bit, I have made some more fine tunes, but we've also transitioned it to more of a zombie theme, which is the deck we have here. First up are our artifacts. Arcane Signet can give us one color of our commander's color identity. Ashnod's Altar allows us to sacrifice our creature to add 2 colorless mana. Carnage Altar, we can pay 3, sack a creature to draw a card. Soul Ring taps to add 2 colorless, and Thought Vessel will tap to give us 1 colorless, but also gives us no maximum hand size. Helping out our commander, we have 2 legends. First is Sir Conrad. It just deals so much damage and destroys our opponent's life total whenever creatures are dying or leaving our graveyard. And Tormod the Desecrator, whenever a card leaves our graveyard, we get a tapped 2/2 zombie creature token. As far as the creatures we have that are not zombies, we have Merciless Executioner and Plague Crafter. Whenever they enter, each player will sacrifice a creature, and Vindictive Vampire and Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent will lose 1 and we will gain 1. Now moving on to the bulk of our zombie army, we have Aven Eternal. Whenever it enters, we can amass 1. Bone Knitter, we can use it to regenerate our zombies. Carrion Feeder gives us a sack outlet. Whenever we sacrifice a creature, we can put a 1/1 counter on Carrion Feeder. Corpse Harvester, we can use it to tutor for zombies from our deck and for swamps. Corpse Knight, whenever another creature enters under our control, each opponent loses 1 life. Death Baron will give our zombies +1/+1 and Death Touch. Diregraph Captain buffs up our zombies, and whenever another zombie we control dies, target opponent will lose 1. Diregraph Colossus enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each zombie in our graveyard, and when we cast a zombie, it will pump out another 2/2 zombie tapped. Dread Malkin has Menace, and we can pay 2 and a black to sack a creature and put 2 1/1 counters on it. Drowned, we can regenerate it for 1 black mana. Eternal Skylord, whenever it enters, it will amass 2, and zombie tokens we control will have flying. Fleshbag Marauder will enter and each player will sack a creature. Gleaming Overseer, whenever it enters, we can amass 1, and it gives zombie tokens we control hexproof and menace. Grey Merchant of Asphodel, whenever it enters, each opponent loses X life, where X is our devotion to black, and then we gain life equal to the life lost this way. Liliana's Reaver has Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player will discard a card, and we will create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. Lord of the Accursed will give our zombies +1/+1, and it can give all our zombies menace. Noxious Ghoul, whenever another zombie comes into play, all non-zombie creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Spark Reaper, we can pay 3, sack a creature or planeswalker to gain a life and draw a card. Undead Augur, whenever it or another zombie we control dies, we'll draw a card and lose 1. And Wayward Servant, whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. For our enchantments, we have Black Market. Whenever a creature dies, it gets a charge counter. Then at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, we add a black for each charge counter on Black Market. Circle of Despair, we can pay 1, sack a creature, and prevent all damage to any creature or player from any one source. Dark Privilege, enchanter creature gets +1/+1, and we can sacrifice a creature to regenerate that creature. Dark Prophecy, whenever a creature we control dies, we will draw 1 and lose 1. Fallen Ideal, the enchanted creature will have flying, and we can sacrifice a creature to give it +2/+1. Whenever Fallen Ideal is put into the graveyard, we can return it to our hand. Gift of Doom, we can sacrifice a creature to morph it, and we can pay 3 to turn it face up at any time to give the enchanted creature Death Touch and Indestructible. Kaya's Ghost Form can help us get our creatures back whenever they die. Liliana's Mastery buffs up our zombies and creates 2 zombies whenever it enters. Open the Graves, whenever a non-token creature we control dies, we get a zombie. Unholy Indenture, whenever the creature dies, we can return it to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. And Vampiric Rites, this card does absolute work. We can pay 1 of the black, sack a creature to gain 1 life and draw a card. We are including 1 planeswalker in this build, Liliana Death's Majesty. We can +1 her to create a 2/2 zombie and mill 2. We can -3 to return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield and it becomes a zombie. And we can -7 to destroy all non-zombie creatures. Now, in my own personal opinion, probably the best planeswalker for this deck would be Liliana Dreadhorde General. However, her price point is a little bit higher, but if you are looking for some upgrades, I think this would be a great place to start. For our instance, Abnormal Endurance, whenever the target creature dies, we can return it to the battlefield tapped. Aetherize can return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. Costly Plunder, we can sacrifice a creature or artifact to draw 2. Counterspell can counter target spell. Ephemerate will allow us to blink target creature. Essence Flux will do the same thing, but if it's a spirit, it'll come in with a 1/1 counter on it. Flicker of Fate can exile target creature enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And Ghostly Flicker can exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and or lands we control, then return them to the battlefield. Negate can counter target non-creature spell. Opt will allow us to scry 1 and then draw a card. Rewind can counter target spell and untap up to 4 lands. Supernatural Stamina, whenever the target creature dies, we'll get it back to the battlefield under our control tapped. And Undying Evil, target creature gains Undying until end of turn. And Village Rites, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 2. For our sorceries, Blood Divination, we can sacrifice a creature to draw 3. Cemetery Recruitment, we can return a creature from our graveyard to our hand, and if it's a zombie, we can draw 1. Cleansing Nova can destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Divination will allow us to draw 2. Open Into Wonder, we can make X target creatures unblockable, and whenever they deal combat damage to a player, we'll draw a card. Sleep can tap all creatures target player controls, and those creatures don't untap during that player's next untap step. And Spark Harvest, as an additional cost, we can sacrifice a creature to destroy target creature or planeswalker. And last but not least is our mana base. We are keeping things very basic with 10 basic islands, 11 basic plains, and 14 basic swamps. And just like that, we've reached the end of another Commander deck tech. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment down below. Let us know what commanders you would like to see us build around or rebuild in the future. We really appreciate the support.